हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू माय चैनल। आज हम करेंगे द रेनिसा। यूनिट 8 है ये। और इससे पहले हमने इसकी ब्लॉक इंट्रोडक्शन पढ़ी थी। तो आज हम रेनिसा के बारे में पढ़ेंगे कि इसमें क्या क्या है। लेट अस स्टार्ट नाउ। This unit will tell us about the basic knowledge of Renaissance and its broader ramifications. तो ये हेल्प करेगा स्टूडेंट्स को डिस्टिंग्विश करने में रेनिसा के डिफरेंट स्टैंड्स, ठीक है, और मेन फीचर एंड फिगर्स ऑफ दिस फेनोमेना and significant social and cultural movements that shaped the Renaissance in England, and role of Reformation movement in the church and of English nationalism in the shaping of English Renaissance, and role of changes in the English court in the production and shaping of Renaissance English literature. Let us start now. Introduction हम इसका थोड़ा पढ़ते हैं. Given that the period we refer to as the Renaissance sits at different times in different countries, वो तो पता ही है हमें कि different times पे आया था, and that the English Renaissance owes much to its continental predecessor. The first unit will explore some of the relations between the two. Uh, Okay, it will focus on trends in learning and the arts, on the evolution of English humanism, and on religious and political movements like Reformation and their impact on English politics and society. It will also tell about the literary, cultural, and economic developments of the period. This will include issues like the evolution of courtier poetry, the relation of poets and the poetry of Elizabethan court politics, and the role of a newly emerging English nationalism in shaping the art of the age. Now, Renaissance, the continental and the English Renaissance. The social, political, and religious cultural forces that we refer to as the Renaissance was first evident in continental Europe and began to be felt in England only about the end of the 15th century. तो पहले यूरोप में आई थी, फिर उसके बाद वो इंग्लैंड में आई थी धीरे धीरे 15th century में. Perhaps the most important of these forces in the continent and in England was the spread of new humanist learning and ideology, especially among the upper classes. This leaning is evident in Italy. Following the fall of Constantinople to the Turks in 1493, refugees from that Constantinople means Italy. Just wait. फिर से पढ़ती हूँ. द फॉलोइंग द फॉल ऑफ इटली टू द टर्क्स. इटली को पहले कॉन्स्टेंटिनोपल बोलते थे. टू द टर्क्स इन 1493. Refugees from that city had brought with them the vast learning and the literature, especially to the Greeks that had been stored in the libraries of the city. अब क्या हुआ, जो टर्क्स ने है ना वो इटली को उस पर कब्ज़ा कर लिया था 1493 में. तो वहाँ से जो रिफ्यूजीज़ बोलते हैं, जो वहाँ के लोग थे ना वो डिफरेंट जगहों पे गए, तो उनको रिफ्यूजी बोला गया. तो रिफ्यूजीज़ जो थे वो उन सिटीज़ से, क्योंकि पहले इटली में काफ़ी लर्निंग और लिटरेचर बहुत ज़्यादा था वहाँ पे, तो वहाँ से लोग क्या कर रहे थे जब बाहर निकल रहे थे इटली से, तो अपने साथ लिटरेचर लेकर आए थे. वो ग्रीक का लिटरेचर लेकर आए थे, जो कि वहाँ की लाइब्रेरीज़ में था. वहाँ की सिटी की लाइब्रेरीज़ में जो ग्रीक का लिटरेचर था उसको वास्ट लर्निंग और लिटरेचर था, वो वहाँ के लोग जो हैं जब दूसरे देशों में जाने लगे, क्योंकि वहाँ पे टर्क आ गए थे तो उन्होंने वहाँ हमला कर दिया था, तो वो लोग जब भागे थे, जब वहाँ से निकले थे तो अपने साथ लिटरेचर लेके निकले थे. दिस प्रोड्यूस द फर्स्ट ग्रेट इटालियन ह्यूमनिस्ट लाइक थोड़ा पढ़ने में Savonarola, Ficino and Pico della Mirandola, who were subsequently to influence early English humanists like Thomas Linacre, John Colet and William Lilly. William Lilly तो हमने सुना है ना, पहले पढ़ा है. Visitors to Italy who took place to England, the new learning. Okay. It was highly influential in the designing of the new curricula in schools and universities, especially the work of the great humanist educationists Desiderius Erasmus. But for a long time it remained without impact on the literature and the art of England. This was primarily because the English language was as yet immature socially and politically without power. The language of the courts was still predominantly French, while that of learning remained Latin. मतलब फ्रेंच जो थी वो कोर्ट की लैंग्वेज थी और लेटिन में थोड़ा लर्निंग वर्निंग चलता था. इंग्लिश इतना अच्छी उस टाइम पे नहीं करती मतलब एग्जिस्ट करती थी इतनी अच्छे से. There were no real tradition as yet of English theatre, prose and or verse, despite the work of Chaucer in the last. Nor was there a major school of art that could be influenced by the new learning, as was the case with Italian artists like Michelangelo एंड लियोनार्डो दा विंसी. लियोनार्डो दा विंसी तो हमने काफ़ी सुना है ना, तो वो इटली के आर्टिस्ट थे. इट इज़ नो को इंसिडेंस दैट देन दैट द फर्स्ट full impact of the Renaissance in English literature came with the translation of Latin and Italian verse into English by poets like Wyatt and Wyatt and Surrey, Surrey. तो जब लेटिन और इसका प्रभाव थोड़ा कम हो मतलब इससे इंग्लिश में कन्वर्ट होना शुरू हुआ ना, तब थोड़ा क्रांति आई थी वहाँ पे. तो इटालियन वर्स या लेटिन वर्स को जब ट्रांसलेट इंग्लिश में किया जाने लगा तो लोगों को समझ में आने लगी, क्योंकि वहाँ पे जो आम जनता थी ना वो तो इंग्लिश ही बोलती थी ना. इंग्लैंड में फ्रेंच तो हाई लोगों की हाई क्लास की लैंग्वेज थी, तो आम जनता तक जब तक कोई लिटरेचर नहीं पहुँचेगा तब तक वो पॉपुलर कैसे होगा. तो इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में जब लेटिन और इटालियन की ट्रांसलेशंस होने लगी तो वहाँ पे और वो ट्रांसलेशन किसने की थी, वायट एंड सूरे ने की थी. तो वो तब जाके कहीं ये लोगों को समझ में आने लगा, है ना. एंड द कॉन्सिक्वेंट एनरिचमेंट ऑफ द लिटरेचर इन द इंग्लिश वर्नैकुलर. तो भाषा मतलब तब डायलेक्ट जैसी होती वैसी थी इंग्लिश. दिस इन टर्न वॉज enabled by the fact that the school and the university system had by now produced a generation of writers literate in the ancient languages and literatures of Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and brought to English writings the humanism of those works. तो जब ट्रांसलेट होने लगा ना इंग्लिश में ये सारा काम, पुराना काम, तो लोगों को समझ में आने लगा. The invention of the printing press also played a role in the emergence of the Renaissance in the continent and in England. देखो कोई चीज़ रेनेसां जब रीबर्थ आया है तो इंग्लिश को जानना, इंग्लिश लोग पहचानते थे, लेकिन उस इंग्लिश में पहले लिखी गई ये चीज़ें तो लोगों को समझ में आने लगी. फिर प्रिंटिंग प्रेस, तब लोग थोड़े पढ़े लिख भी गए थे, तो प्रिंटिंग प्रेस के आने से भी रेनेसां बढ़ा था. इट मेड पॉसिबल द सडन एंड इमेंस पॉपुलराइजेशन ऑफ द न्यू लर्निंग इन इटली and in the other European countries. It also contributed to the development and consolidation of national languages and consequently of national traditions of literature. The classics were translated from the Latin and Greek originals into the vernacular languages of different countries and published widely, allowing greater access to the new learning. This pattern was true of England too. Where the English Renaissance differed substantially from its European counterparts was in the kind of impact that the Reformation had on the Renaissance in England. Now we will study this in greater detail in next section. इसमें को हम पढ़ेंगे. For now, let us note that the spirit of unbounded humanism associated with the continental Renaissance, with its celebration of the human form and intellect, was tempered by the moral vision of powerful Puritan imagination, which had already established itself in England by the time the Renaissance took effect there. Secondly, the Renaissance in England was never as profoundly an elitist phenomena. Elite phenomena नहीं था as it was on the continent. Perhaps because of the distance from Italy, perhaps because of the entrenched popular traditions of theatre and folk music and poetry, the emergent high culture that was the Renaissance in England had to deal with and assimilate local, popular and mass forms and traditions of literature and culture more than the Renaissance in France, Because of the spread of Protestant teachings and of literacy, the English Renaissance also had a mass base very different from its continental counterparts. Thirdly, the direction of politics in the age, which led to the political distancing of England from both France and Italy, along with a native resurgence of nationalistic sentiments and ambitions to rival the Greeks and Romans in their cultural achievements, led to an involution of the spirit of the Renaissance that was specifically English in character and distinct from its European counterparts. The poetry of Edmund Spenser in many ways typifies this character, as we shall see shortly. Now, the Renaissance and the Reformation. As we noted above, English Renaissance was crucially influenced by another very important historical phenomena which differentiated it from its continental predecessors, the Reformation. In essence, the Reformation refers to the various and often bloody and violent movements against the Roman Catholic Church. रिफॉर्मेशन क्या था कि वायलेंट मूवमेंट्स थी एक रोमन कैथोलिक चर्च के अगेंस्ट दैट स्प्रेड ओवर कॉन्टिनेंटल यूरोप through the through the 4th, 10th and 15th century, 14th and the 15th century, demanding large scale reforms in its beliefs and ecclesiastical practices. Okay, उस टाइम पे बहुत ही ऐसी practices होती थी ना. It was in many ways a consequence of the spread of the new humanist learning on the continent and of the power of the printing press, which permitted the translation and popularization of the Bible from Latin and Greek into European vernaculars, annulling the laïty's dependency on the ecclesiastical order for the interpretation and mediation of the Bible. It was led by figures like Martin Luther, and John Calvin, but was preceded by reformers like Saint Francis, Peter Waldo, John Huss, and John Wycliffe, who repeatedly critiqued the abuses in ecclesiastical practices from the early 13th century onward. They were not inclined to actually break from the Roman Catholic Church, and extremism that later reformers of the 16th century adopted, resulting in the many breakaway sects that constitute Protestantism. The conventional date for the beginning of the Reformation then is October 31st, 1517, the date that Luther is said to have posted his 95 theses critiquing the church on the doors of the Castle Church, Wittenberg. It is falsely assumed by many that Luther had intended to break from the Catholic Church, but the fact is that it was the Catholic Church that expelled Luther against his own desire. Later reformers, however, picked up on Luther's principles of dissent and deliberately broken from the Catholic Church, plunging much of Europe into religious and civil strife for the next few centuries. The reformist spirit had already made its way to England by the time of Luther, through the work of John Wycliffe, who not only protested against the excessive worldly power of the Catholic Church but was instrumental in first translating the Bible into English. Wycliffe's translation of the New Testament was not very accessible, and his followers, the Lollard, did not have much impact on the religious imagination. Wycliffe's work was furthered by William Tyndale, who wrote and popularized a much more accessible translation of the Bible. When Henry VIII, who had initially been a strong defender of Catholic orthodoxy, broke from the Roman papacy in 1535, the force to the Reformation in England became politically powerful, although tempered by the Ising's desire to form a Church of England that would lean neither towards Catholicism, nor towards the more rigid versions of Protestantism. The more radical varieties of Protestantism, however, continue to flourish in England in the form of sects like Diggers, the Quakers, the Presbyterians, etc., and remained influential in shaping the directions of politics as well as of society and culture. Their impact is felt especially in the tempering of Renaissance, humanism, and sensualism through the consistent maintenance of Christian tenets over classical, especially Platonic ideals. So, even while the Italian influence on the emergent English literature of the period is strongly evident, it remains harnesses to an essentially Christian vision, revealing in that literature a tension between a strong fascination for the former and an equally strong moral condemnation of it. ओके नाउ हमारा ये रह गया सोशल एंड पॉलिटिकल सर्कमस्टांसिस ऑफ द रेनेसा एंड इसके बाद हमारा है कॉर्टियर पोइट्स एंड कोर्ट पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में थोड़ा पढ़ेंगे. उसके बाद इंग्लिश नेशनलिज्म एंड द रेनेसा के बारे में पढ़ेंगे. ओके थैंक यू सो मच. इसके बाद शायद ये फर्स्ट वीडियो है इसका ना रेनेसा का. ओके थैंक यू.